It's after midnight and she's on your phone. Ay, 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 ay. Oh. Hello and welcome to the JB Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. Happy Sunday to every single one of you here looking at my mug today. Just let you guys know that the JB Show airs every single Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can catch me on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4, as well as the Savvy and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. I also host my own channel called the JB Font Channel. You can catch me there on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please make sure to click the thumbs up. And if you are new, please subscribe as well and click the bell icon because you know that the YouTube algorithm doesn't like us. So I would like to give my salutations to everyone that is joining. So good to see you and it's happy to have you. Now, as far as this stream is concerned, it's kind of a pre-record. The reason being is because I'm relaxing this weekend. I'm chilling with family, so I wanted to cover this before I had this weekend, so that you guys would have the news as well. So, as you have surmised from the really the headline and the thumbnail that I have, are talking about Pakistan. Now, thing is that a lot of these countries don't get a lot of attention. I mean, it probably does get is getting some attention on corporate media, but as somebody who is on the left, who actually does really care about what's happening to the people and what's going on in that side of the world, uh, really, who's really to blame for all this that's going on? And in my view, it is really the corporations that's really to blame. That's what's going on, and this is a tragedy that's going on, of hundreds of thousands of people displaced because of the floods that are going on in Pakistan. And if you have not been paying attention, well, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to bring that to you as well. So, um, let me show you exactly what's going on here in Pakistan. It's pretty bad. And I'm going to start off with this one. I'm going to share my screen really quickly with you. And you're going to see exactly what we're talking about. So, and let me enlarge this really quick. All right. So, thanks to Powell Morgan, it says over 30 million people, nearly the population of my country, have been displaced by flooding in Pakistan, caused by climate change, for which the US and Europe hold overwhelming responsibility. Capitalism is washing the future away before our eyes. As you can see this, I'm just going to play it. It's going to be pretty bad, but yeah, take a look. So as you can so as you can see here, this is just a level of devastation that has happened in Pakistan. And so this is what people are dealing with. And imagine you being somebody who's poor or working class. Hell, even people who are wealthy are experiencing this. So really, this actually holds no discrimination towards anybody that's experiencing this. And this is the result of us really just uh having finite growth, infinite growth of profits on a finite planet. And so this is what's been going on. And just imagine, this happening here in the United States, right? Imagine this happening, because really it has happened in many different forms. I mean, just think about Hurricane Katrina or the many other hurricanes that happened since that, since 2005. Imagine the climate crises that we experience on a frequent basis here. And so, because of this is what people are going through. And if you don't think that there's going to be some climate refugees that'll happen because of this, and if you don't think this is not going to happen here in the United States, well, you're sadly mistaken. And, this is the result of us not caring and not coming together collectively for this. Um, and there's more footage that I'm going to share. Some more footage that I'm going to share with you about this. So um, I'm going to go to the next one. Um, Before I show that, I'm going to show this one next. Let's see. Let's share. Now, this is from Joyce Karam. It says horrifying footage from South Pakistan today. The entire building washed away by floods. Over 935 people killed, more than 33 million affected. Worst natural disaster for country in decades. And so this is going to be, yeah, you're going to see this as well. So there's no sound here, but as you can see, this is a house or a building. Basically, uh, the water washed away the underlying ground below it, and now it's just washing entire buildings away, concrete buildings that either house people or were, businesses, and it's literally washing them down a torrent river. And this is, due to a lot of what we go through during the climate crisis. We have, changing of weather patterns and intensifying of different weather events that are happening because of basically the warming of the climate due to this hyper industrialization and use of fossil fuels that is constantly happening in our world. And really, it's the result of corporations doing this because of short term profits and not looking down the line for the long term. And so you see this constantly happening, consistently happening, and it affects people. I'm sure that there's a lot of rich people who this isn't happening because, or if it, even if it did, they have second homes in other places. So it's not as big of a deal for those who are super wealthy who don't have to go through this. And this is exactly what you're seeing here. So I'm going to also move on to the next one. Unfortunately, this is what's going on, and this is not this. This is going to be more frequent as time goes on, and that's the sad part. Is really there is there's a lack of empathy. There's a lack of forethought into how our actions, directly impact other people's lives. So let me share my screen again. And this is going to be from Al Jazeera Plus. It's going to be a video, and we will take a look at this, and I'll meet you on the other side.
Right now, Pakistan is at the forefront of the climate crisis. Pakistan produces less than 1% of the world's carbon emissions, but is the country fifth most affected by climate change. And this summer, the country is fully feeling those effects. A third of Pakistan is currently underwater. Weeks of heavy rains and melting glaciers have led to the death of over 1,100 people.
और ये आप देखिए कितना कीचड़ है इसमें, इतनी लकड़ आ रही है, लकड़ की कोई लिमिट नहीं है। जैसे लगता है पूरा पहाड़ जो है जिस तरह गिरा हुआ है।
These are some before and after satellite images. Here's what Asad Raymond of the Climate Justice Coalition told Democracy Now!
Pakistan, like many countries in the global south, are responsible for a negligible amount of global emissions, by 1%. People refuse to deal with what is the core of this problem. The core of the problem is we have a broken energy system dominated by fossil fuel companies. We have a broken food system dominated by industrial agribusiness.
As oil companies continue to make billions every year, the UN warns of climate apartheid, where wealthy nations pay to escape overheating, but the rest of the world is left to suffer. While Pakistani officials have pointed out the role of Western nations and their use of fossil fuels, some critics put blame on the government. They say bad policymaking, especially around infrastructure and structural inequality, left the country unprepared for the catastrophe. The government says over 1 million homes have been destroyed or damaged. The floods could cost the country more than $10 billion.
Wow. So that's basically, what's happened in Pakistan, and it's a tragedy because the thing is that, like, they said it's climate apartheid, basically making it so that people suffer. And the thing is that it's kind of like, and I hate to put it this way, but it's basically like, you know, shitting in a river, and then your turd flows down river and it gets consumed by the people who are down river, who basically are just trying to survive. And for those of us in the west, it's like, oh well, we don't see it, it doesn't affect us, so we don't care. And yet next thing you know, you look around the world and see that it really is affecting people. And so there's this mindset that if it doesn't directly affect me, then why do I care? And so that's exactly what's going on, especially within the United States and primarily in the West. And so you see what's happening. And then on top of that, because of capitalism, and you look in countries like Pakistan, they have their wealth that's concentrated at the top. So therefore, then even when it comes to their infrastructure, you have them being lackadaisical within their infrastructure. Or even then, some of these countries are indebted to, like, for instance, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And so they really don't have the funds to be able to, put towards their infrastructure. And then they can also still concentrate wealth to the top, like many other capitalist countries do. And so the people and their infrastructure get left by the wayside. And so that's what's going on in places like Pakistan. So, it's going on, and simultaneously, in many other countries as well, like, Pakistan's not going to be the only one that actually ends up going through this. It's also going to be in other countries as well, including here in the United States, because, that's what this system does. It is unfair, unjust system that continuously does this, to, people, especially disenfranchised and displaced people. It displaces people all over the world. So this one is from Colin McCarthy. Says hard to comprehend the scale of the flood disaster in Pakistan, the fifth largest, most populated nation in the world. Nearly 1,400 dead, 1 million houses damaged or destroyed, and 50 million people displaced. One third of the country is underwater. Imagine one third of this entire country being underwater, one third of the entire United States. That would be crazy. And then as you look, so as you can see here, this is what's going on. And the thing is that, like, will we get to a point where we allow ourselves to get to a point where we will say no more? And a lot of us, those of us at RBN, we are, talking about changing the system from the bottom up. When you talk about changing the system from the bottom up, and changing it to a new foundation, we're not just talking about affecting ourselves here in the United States. You see, here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. Let's say, for instance, we actually did succeed in doing it. Let's say we led a revolution and we changing literally actively the system from the ground up. Let's say, we put in a government that's egalitarian now, that affects, our society in a positive way. Let's say we do all these good things for ourselves in the government. We make it so that now, companies now are, a majority of the companies are now owned by the workers. Let's say we have a company that's actively, that has ended the carceral state, and now let's say we are now closing the military bases around the world. We're calling back all the troops, and we have nationalized the oil and gas industry. We nationalized the healthcare system. We did things that, a lot of us really want to do. Um, that in turn will help because we'll be winding down, our use of fossil fuels within this country. We will be actually using the funds, instead of using these funds for the military industrial complex. We would actually be sending funds, dollars, over to countries like Pakistan, over to areas like Gaza, sending money over to areas like Syria and Yemen, and Libya, and areas like Nicaragua, Honduras. We will be sending these funds over and resources, to people in these areas in order to help them to rebuild. So it'll be kind of like what China does with the Belt and Road Initiative, really without asking much of anything back, because we know that, from our perspective, from our analysis, that if you help other people in the world, it's going to come back to you. Just like I said in the tweet earlier, me helping you helps me. So even if I'm not necessarily asking for something back, that, goodness that you spread into another part of the world, it will come back to us in some way, shape, or form. And so that's something that needs to happen. Well, because we now hypothetically have a government that actually works for the people, the proletariat. It's a government that's run by the proletariat. Then we're actually helping not just ourselves, but we're helping other people abroad as well. We are no longer using war as our primary, means to make, capital or wealth in this nation. In fact, we're actually using our means to fight climate change so that the people, our family on the other side of this planet, is no longer going through this. And so really, by helping, the country here, we're also going to be helping others abroad. And so we have to lead the charge in this, but by doing that, we actually have to change the structure of this country and how it operates. And unfortunately, the structure that we are under right now is capitalism, and that is what's causing this. And so imagine, us changing this system from the ground up, and imagine going, 100 years into the future under a new system that actually is ran by the workers, and that workers are literally owning the companies. We have community based and nationalization of some of these essential industries, and that we change it over to a more renewable energy based system. Then how would Pakistan look? How would Yemen look? How would Iran look, 100 years after that? How would the world look? How would the Amazon look 100 years after that, or the Great Barrier Reef? How would these areas start to look 100 years into the future after that change has happened? And really, it would be an exciting thing to see, because then you would see, people, actually not even just surviving but more thriving. So I think that's something that is, beneficial to all of us. And so that's something that I actually look forward to seeing. So yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up as well was this article. Well, actually, before that, let's go to this other article, and this is out of NBC News. And it says satellite images show Pakistan's devastation with an area the size of Wyoming underwater. It says homes and buildings have been swept away and farmland turned into mud across swaths of the South Asian country. And so it's basically just showing right now, what is going on in this country, right? And how it has been completely displaced. And so this is by Rodakwan. It says Pakistan's landscape has been transformed. Homes and buildings have been swept away, and farmland turned into mud across swaths of the country. New satellite imagery of the recently deadly flooding shows almost 1,200 people have been killed by unprecedented heavy monsoon rains that have left around a third of the South Asian nation underwater, an area the size of Wyoming. At least half a million people have been displaced from their homes, according to the latest government figures. Floodwaters carved a huge inland lake in the South Sindh province within 3 days. The images released Tuesday by the satellite company Maxar Technologies. So it shows here where the floodwaters have arrived. And then there you go. It's just all mud after the floodwaters. See? And it says the imagery provided by NASA satellites shows farmland has been replaced by mud trenches in several parts of the central Punjab province. It also shows that a small fraction of the homes swept away by floods and the devastation, and with and what the Pakistani government estimates equals to at least $10 billion in damage across the entire country. Thousands of villagers who have lost their homes still await much needed supplies and aid in refugee camps across the country. Just imagine being someone who is, in the rural areas who are living this, and then your home and farm and livelihood gets swept away by this. And really, this climate change is really at the fault of a lot of our corporations, who have basically put their profits ahead of the lives of people and our environment and the animals and plants within our planet. So this is exactly what's been happening. It talks about this is the Kabul River in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province near uh, Karsada in northern Pakistan. And then, it shows that, you basically look at these mudslides after the flooding. So this is what's been happening, you know, and then, you look at basically the changes in the landscape. So this is the before, and then it shows after, and then here's before, and then that's after. So, it's just horrific to see, and so my heart goes out to the people who are in this area in Pakistan and what they've been going through, and we have to start caring, and part of that caring is, you know, making sure that we do our part on this side of the world to change our government so that, because we're all together in this. And the thing is that it's going to affect us eventually. And sad to say that, it's already killed so many people, in this. And I just really just I don't even know what to say in regards to this. It's just horrible. And so this is what's been going on in Pakistan. Uh so a lot of this blame goes on corporations and in capitalism. Let me make sure to share this article with you as well. Um, and what I mean by climate refugees, I just want to make sure uh, that is defined accurately. So this is from Zurich.com. It says, who are climate refugees? It says, and the highlighted section says, the term climate refugees has been used since 1985 with UN government program expert Isam El Hinawi defining climate or environmental refugees as people who have been forced to leave their traditional habitat temporarily or permanently because of marked environmental disruption, but the extent of the definition still causes some confusion. Well, really, we don't have that confusion anymore because really it's just showing people who are displaced either temporarily or permanently because of what has happened results of climate change. You can see this has happened, during Hurricane Katrina, when it comes to a lot of people who were living in New Orleans. A lot of people in New Orleans basically, had to move to places like Alabama or into Texas, and a lot of them are still living there. They haven't moved back. And then some people who temporarily moved back to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, after the waters receded, and after improvements have been made. But these things are becoming more of the rule. These things are becoming more and more, uh, you know, um, frequent because of this climate change. And these companies, these corporations are to blame. In fact, there is an article that I want to show regarding this. And so let me make sure to share this article with you as well. So this is coming out of The Guardian. So this is entitled Just 100 Companies Responsible for 71% of global emissions. Now this it says this article is more than 5 years old. So this was 5 years ago. So it makes you wonder how much more is it now? This is from 2017. So this article starts off with, it says just 100 companies have been the source of more than 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions since 1988, according to a new report. It says the Carbon Majors report pinpoints how relatively small set of fossil fuel producers may hold the key to systemic change on carbon emissions. Um, so this comes out of the collaboration of the Climate Accountability Institute. Says traditionally large scale greenhouse gas emissions data is collected at a national level, but this report focuses on fossil fuel producers. Compiled from a database of publicly available emissions figures, it is intended as the first in a series of publications to highlight the role of companies and their investors could play in tackling climate change. So it says the report that found more than half of global industrial emissions since 1988, the year the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was established, the IPCC, can be traced to just 25 corporate and state owned entities. The scale of historic emissions associated with the fossil fuel producers is large enough to have contributed significantly to climate change. So it talks about ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, and Chevron are identified as some of the highest emitting investor-owned companies since 1988. Fossil fuel companies continue to be extracted at the same rate over the next 28 years. They were between 1988 and 2017. Global average temperatures would be on course to rise by 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. It is likely to have catastrophic consequences, including substantial species extinction and global food scarcity risks. So basically, not only is it ruining the amount of uh, animals in our ecosystem that will be going extinct, but it also is going to be ruining our food supply. So now we will be going, putting us, making us starve even more. While it continues, while companies have a huge role to play in driving climate change, the barrier is the absolute tension between short term profitability and the urgent need to reduce emissions. Carbon Tracker study in 2015 found that the fossil fuel companies risk wasting more than $2 trillion over the coming decade by pursuing coal, oil, and gas projects that could be worthless in the face of international action on climate change and advances on renewables, in turn posing substantial threats to investor returns. I don't give a shit about investor returns. My investor returns do not mean a damn thing if we don't have a planet to live on. And so this is why I say that, how, say for instance, how somebody like Donald Trump put someone like Bessie DeVos as head of she put her as education secretary, and she basically wanted to privatize or get rid of public education. I honestly see that as a model and not in the way that you think. So instead, nationalizing the fossil fuel industry and then putting uh, it under the Department of Energy and putting someone who a climate scientist as head of the Department of Energy who will wind down and take the our dependence on oil and reduce it to zero, and basically winding down these fossil fuel companies under the Department of Energy is something that I honestly would do. And in doing so, the people who work within these corporations that are now nationalized would, we do a just transition into renewable energy. So the people who are working on these oil rigs, the people who are working, in these coal industries, doing a just transition into different industries that are more focused on renewables, so that number one, they continuously are working, in good worker owner jobs and co-ops, so that they can, and even then, putting them through uh, schools, whether it be college courses or technical education, so that they either can stay within the energy industry but go into transfer into renewables, or if they can, if they want to just get out of the energy industry, period. Let's say somebody is working in the offices for, let's say, Exxon Mobil, but then they say, well, I always wanted to go into nursing. Well, then they can do that and uh, go into school for free, because, truth be told, we should have an education system that is free at the point of service. So then they would go to that for free. And, I think that they also should have, their livelihood supplemented. So a basic income for them until they can get themselves into the industry that they want. And then they can become a worker owner either in that industry, or if we do have a nationalization of the healthcare industry, then they go to work for the healthcare industry there. And so, honestly, I think that's the best course of action, because if you nationalize it and then you wind it down, then you're basically saving, our world, by doing your part and taking away the dependence on fossil fuels. And also having that dependence on fossil fuels and taking that away also means that we will no longer have our military industrial complex having a reason to put abroad our men and women in uniform, you know, and our people in uniform to basically guard oil fields for the sake of profit for these companies. So therefore, the whole need to have the military industrial complex really is diminished. And then on top of that, we can actually have more justification to cut slash the military budget, so then we can reallocate those sources to go towards more better means. These means being to replant, a lot of the green infrastructure. And by green infrastructure, I mean our forests, and different areas within our country, so that we can actually, help the planet to replenish. We can actually, I would love to send troops to Brazil to plant trees so that we can rebuild the Amazon rainforest. I would love to do that. It'd be like, okay, so as a soldier, your tools are no longer an M16 or an AK-47 or whatever weapons that they use, but your actual tool of choice would be a steam shovel that digs holes so that you can be able to put thousands of trees into the ground, and then these thousands of trees, and then you know, uh, maybe work on doing some desalinization and taking that water, those tons of gallons of water, those millions of gallons of water, and using planes and jets to dump this water all over, as much as you possibly can. Will you still have to use some fossil fuels in order to use these planes and jets in order to uh, dump water into these areas, and it's going to take a lot. Yeah, but at the same time, it's basically using, this in order to uh, grow these areas. You know, so it's basically using that in order to benefit the planet. But at the same time, as we're coming up with new ways and innovating to use different modes of transportation, we could probably use different modes of flight, in order to help not use fossil fuels for, for instance, for our vehicles that, are in the air too. So I'm just trying to think of different ways, as far as helping to irrigate, to help, these uh these areas so that we can actually have, a planet that survives and that, we can have for the future. I mean, we can do so much, within our own government, especially if we just change it, from the ground up. But this also takes, us, talking to one another and uniting on class lines, because this is what it's all about. So let me go back into the article, because I can go on this forever. But it says a fifth of global industrial greenhouse gas emissions are backed by public investment, according to the report. That puts a significant responsibility on those investors to engage with carbon majors and urge them to disclose climate risk. So they say there are some companies that are trying to, invest so that they can rid themselves of their carbon footprint. But I mean, when it comes to capitalism, it just doesn't work, because their devotion really is to profit. They have that fiduciary responsibility. So you're not going to push as hard when you have this profit motive. And they talk about having green investments, but thing is that those investments ring hollow when really, we need a complete overhaul now. We are so late, and really there are some irreparable damages that have been done. But we, in order to save ourselves so that we don't end up getting as Afeni said, months prior, shaken off, we need to uh shaken off this planet, as it were. We need to actually come up with something that's drastic and that really just uh makes it so that we don't, you know doom ourselves, basically. So yeah. So unfortunately, what's going on in Pakistan is just, it's it's sick, and my heart just, it breaks for people who are going through this. And I've been through power outages, which is nowhere near what is going on in places, like this. Just God, losing your home, like really, like losing your home to this, and then you realize that you have these people on the other side of the world and these shareholders who really don't give a rat's ass about you and your family and what they're going through, and they're really what are contributing to this. Like I just it's the one thing I can say is that to me this is sociopathic. The mindset that you have to have in order to do this. And so I just really, feel for people who are going through this, and solidarity to all the people, with all the people in Pakistan that are going through this. And you know, put governments like ours in here in the United States, they're gonna say, "Oh, we're gonna send aid and things like that." But the thing is like, number one, that's a band-aid on a gaping wound. Really, the best way that this government can truly actually help countries like this is really just taking our dependency off of fossil fuels, and the best way to do that is really to I know the Green Party had a Green New Deal, and a Green New Deal really should be in the trillions, and by trillions I'm saying maybe 30-40 trillion dollars investment into just completely changing our entire industry. Not just the fossil fuel industry, but also the agribusiness industry, getting cars off the road. And, because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, we can move over to electric vehicles. But the thing is that that could still be something that is um, detrimental to the world, because then instead of having wars over fossil fuel, we'll now start having wars over lithium mines. And that doesn't work as well. So, instead, you know, and then on top of that, we still use fossil fuels for our power our power grid. So, you know, and I know there's some people who disagree with nuclear, you know, but there have been, from what I've been hearing, advancements. Uh, instead of using uranium, they're now using thorium, which really is significantly safer. So there may be some advancements in that regarding nuclear and using thorium instead. I mean, that may be warranted to look at. I'm not saying that I'm completely on the side of it, but I'm saying if there's a way that we can actually get our dependence off fossil fuels and start looking at something that's, massively safer, means, and on top of it, using that as the foundation to start doing more mass transit, all over the world, mass electric transit, not only having electric buses and trains, and commuter rail that are in our local areas, but also mass high speed transit that also use electricity, that goes across, state lines and into, different parts of the country. Like, imagine a high speed rail that runs at 200 miles per hour, in this country. And then you can get from places like here in Orlando, Florida, to Philly or to Manhattan in a mere 7-8 hours. Like, just imagine, and we don't necessarily have to get on planes. Like, what if I had 7-8 hours to spare in one day, and I don't have to get to New York in 2 hours? Well, I can just get on a train that's high speed transit, and then I can get on in the morning, and by that late afternoon, early evening, I'm in New York, and I can do that. I mean, imagine having high speed transit, and you work in one state but you live in another. Imagine living in Texas, and then you can commute from Texas to Nevada, in a day. I mean, you know, not living in Texas and community to Nevada, but living in one side of Texas, because Texas is massive. But then you can commute to another side of Texas, you know, in just a matter of hours, and in it's just a couple of hours. And so you can do that, and or even just um, not necessarily needing a car to get wherever you want. And also, getting rid of cars or personal automobiles as status symbols. Getting rid of that. It's just there's so many things that can be done that really can save ourselves, and yet we just don't have. Well, a lot of us personally have the will to do it. We actually want it to happen. But the thing is that the people who are at the top, they see that the profit margin, and they don't have the will to do it. So really, they shouldn't have be in power. And money in politics really did a number on us. And so I just think that you know there's so much that we can do, you know, but it just takes us in order to take that power back. So yeah, that's really what I see happening. And so I just really want to see a more just world. And once we get that, sky's the limit for humanity. And we got to realize that the pain that the people right now are feeling in Pakistan, that's also our pain as well. Their pain is our pain. And so I just I really want to alleviate this now, and I think we can. And so if you know of any foundations that are helping people on the ground in Pakistan, continuously let people know. Tag me in Twitter if you need to. But yeah, so yeah, that's what we need to do. You know. So anywho, I just want to thank you all for watching. This is going to be an abbreviated version as well, because yeah, there's only so much that I can talk about regarding this, because this is kind of emotionally exhausting too. So, but I just want to thank you for tuning in. Be sure to also um, tune in this Tuesday on my channel. I will be talking to Michelle Pfeiffer, not the famous actress Michelle Pfeiffer, but no, this is the activist Michelle Pfeiffer. I call her the better Michelle Pfeiffer. She will be on my channel, and we will be talking about disability rights, which will be great to talk about. Also, tune in this Thursday for the Sabby and JB show and RBN Live on this Tuesday. And also, I will be doing a special stream on my channel on this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be talking to independent presidential candidate John Stasevich. So that will be great to talk about, and I hope you all join me for that conversation as well. Also, I will be getting into, I will probably be a little bit late, but I'll be reading the books on my channel. Uh, Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti and Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. I'm seeing a lot of people actually talk about Blood in My Eye by George Jackson on Twitter, which is great, which is promising. A lot of people are picking it up and they're enjoying it. And I hope that if you are on Rockfin, if you have access to Rockfin, you can listen to my readings on Rockfin. I'm really, in the middle of the book right now, and it's great, and I can't wait to talk more about it with you guys. And if you're on Twitter, if you guys want to talk about the book too, I think that's pretty great. So, what are your thoughts, especially about what's going on in Pakistan? Have you been seeing results of this climate catastrophe, kind of locally in a small way? Have you guys been noticing some changes in your climate in regards to the rainfall or the heat waves in your local area? Put that down in the comments as well, about what's going on. And any ideas as to, what are your thoughts about using nuclear power by use of thorium? Like, do you think that that's a good idea, or do you think that's a really bad idea? Have you did extensive research on it? I admittedly haven't, but I've been talking to some friends who have done some research on it, and they say that it's pretty promising. And I would like to know more about that, so that if in case we're more educated and up to speed on it, then maybe that's a possibility. Or if it's still too dangerous, then we have to come up with a different way. Let's talk about it. This is about exchanging information so that we can grow. I had a conversation with someone earlier on, and we were talking, and he said, you know it's not about figuring out who's right, but it's about figuring out what's right. And I think that is um so poignant. In fact, it was John Stasevich who said that. So I think that's a good way of gauging. It's not about who's right; it's about what's right. And we know what's right, in regards to this planet and what is best for it. So the question is, all we have to do is just do it. Thing is that those who have the levers of power, we literally have to take those levers away from them, because their greed is really dooming us to our peril. So, to our extinction, really. So, yeah. So I just wanted to, talk about that. Thank you so much to everybody who has been viewing and watching. Um, and yeah. Oh, by the way, if you haven't liked the stream, please like the stream as well. And if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure to subscribe. And thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you to all the super chats as well. Unfortunately, this is earlier recording, so I cannot read them. But I do appreciate all the super chats or super stickers and the tips on Rockfin as well. Thank you so very much. And if you like our content and would like to support us, please consider supporting our Patreon. So that's patreon.com/, revolutionary blackout. So that is and it's rolling on the ticker right there, right there. Yeah. So, anywho, I would just like to thank all of you for joining me. I want you to water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it, support the people who are going through these climate catastrophes, support your neighbors. And what can I say? Forehead kisses. Smoke up if you got them, people. Mwah! I love you. I love you. Mm, 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 mm.